January 4th, 1981, Cleveland Stadium for this AFC divisional matchup between the Cleveland Browns and the Oakland Raiders. This is a huge game, as the winner of this one goes to the AFC Championship to take on the San Diego Chargers. Led by MVP quarterback Brian Sipe, the Browns might be the hottest team in football at this moment. After starting 2-3 through their first 5 games, they finished the season winning 9 of their final 11 to take the AFC Central crown. Ever since the merger, things haven't been great for the Browns. They hadn't made it to the playoffs since 1972, they hadn't hosted a playoff game since 1971, and they hadn't won a playoff game since 1969, when they beat the Dallas Cowboys in the Eastern Conference Championship. Basically, this is Cleveland's best chance in over a decade to make it to the Super Bowl. Entering the fourth quarter, the Browns are holding on to a 12-7 lead. Things are looking good, until they weren't, because in the fourth quarter, Mark Van Egan would punch it in from a yard out to give the Raiders a 14-12 lead. I made a video a while ago about the famous Raider fullback if you want to check that out in the upper right corner. With roughly 4 minutes left in the game, the Browns got the ball back, looking to get something going and get into field goal range to win. What happens next?
Now they know the game is getting underway.
4:39 left to play. Brian Sipe calls his own number. Takes off. He's not. Oh, free football. A free ball. Lester Hayes again goes up in the air about 10 feet, so that means the Raiders have the ball.
The Raiders have the ball deep in Cleveland territory. It's not looking good for the Browns at all. The clock is running, and the Raiders now have a 3rd and 1. After Van Egan gets stuffed, it's 4th and inches, and Oakland decides to go for it. They don't want to risk the field goal and give Cleveland an opportunity to touch the ball again. A first down wouldn't end the game outright, since the Browns have all 3 timeouts left, but it would all but seal it. Cleveland needs a big stop here, and they're about to get one.
Derek Jensen in motion. They go to Van Egan.
He didn't get it.
I don't think he got it. The Cleveland Browns come up. Making the strike was Robert L. Jackson and Dick Ambrose.
There's now 2:22 left in the game. After a big stop, the Browns have new life. They have a chance to win the game. Time for the Cardiac Kids to do what they've done all year, win it at the finish line. All they need to do is drive down the field from their own 15-yard line and get it close enough where they can try the field goal. Can they do it? When you have the MVP of the league as your quarterback, the answer to that is a resounding yes. A back shoulder throw to Hall of Fame tight end Ozzie Newsome sets them up near midfield at the 2-minute warning. A 3rd down penalty on the Raiders keeps the drive alive after that. Then, Sipe finds halfback Greg Pruitt for a first down to get the Browns into Oakland territory, and a draw play to Mike Pruitt throws the Raiders off guard, giving the Browns another first down. Cleveland has the ball on Oakland's 13-yard line, down by just 2 points with 49 seconds left. Oakland only has 1 timeout left, so theoretically, the Browns can run out the clock and set themselves up for a field goal with no time left to win it. Everything was looking incredibly promising for Cleveland. They're about to go to the AFC Championship. What you're about to witness is one of the most heartbreaking moments in Cleveland Browns history. It's remembered right up there with the drive and the fumble as moments that live in infamy. May I introduce you to Red Right 88.
Seconds to go. Wrong. Into the end zone. And they might have iced this one, no pun intended.
I know exactly what you're thinking right now. Why on earth would you throw the ball there? This has to be an episode of Dumb Decisions, right? Well, not quite. Because while the end result was not ideal, the actual call itself might not be as bad as you think. Welcome to a brand new series I'm calling In Defense Of. Let's dive right in. Before I break this play down, what's the difference between this series and Dumb Decisions? With Dumb Decisions, that series is focused on decisions where any sane person knows this has no shot at working whatsoever, except for the head coach. Calling a fake punt on 4th and 35 where a player who has never thrown a pass in the NFL before is the one throwing the ball? You know that's not going to work. Kicking a 47-yard field goal on 2nd down for seemingly no reason? You know that's stupid. Calling a fake punt with a player who had never even practiced the play before and had no idea what the call was? You know that's going to backfire. That series is about decisions where you don't even need hindsight to know that it's a bad one. This series, on the other hand, is about decisions that were widely criticized because of the end result, but the idea itself wasn't that bad. Good idea, just bad execution. And Red Right 88 is regarded by a lot of people as one of the worst coaching decisions in NFL history. I cannot understate the impact that this play had. Because of this play, the Raiders won the game and went on to win the Super Bowl. If the Raiders don't win the Super Bowl that year, Any chance down the line of Jim Plunkett or Tom Flores getting into the Hall of Fame is gone. Dan Fouts might have a ring if the Raiders and Chargers don't meet in the AFC Championship. Dick Vermeil might have a ring with the Eagles. When you combine that with his ring with the Rams at Super Bowl 34, he could be a Hall of Fame coach right now if Red Right 88 doesn't happen. Obviously, the end result was not ideal for Cleveland here. But was the actual play call itself awful? Was the idea of throwing the ball in this situation, instead of running out the clock and setting up the game-winning field goal, a bad idea? Honestly, I don't think so. It's time to defend Red Right 88. We have to start with what most people suggested they do in this situation. Run out the clock and kick the field goal. Assuming they don't lose any yards on any of these plays, it would have been a 30-yard field goal for Don Cockroft. On paper, this is a chip shot. But it's way more complicated than that for this game. Starting with the weather, it was only 2 degrees outside, with wind speeds of 21 miles per hour. That's a wind chill factor of minus 20. Under the old wind chill factor formula, it was a wind chill factor of minus 37. This was the coldest playoff game since the Ice Bowl between the Packers and the Cowboys back in 1967. It's tough to visualize temperatures that cold, so here are some quotes from some of the players about just how cold it was on this day. Safety Mike Davis said it was so cold that you could lick Gatorade off of a stick. And Al Davis said that it was so cold that it was like fighting the Russians in Moscow. I looked at every single field goal in NFL history up until that point to take place in game time temperatures less than 5 degrees. There really isn't a whole lot of action going on in the 30-plus range. Kicking a field goal when it's super cold is not easy. And when teams try to kick field goals in freezing temperatures, it sometimes leads to hilarious results, like this one. That's an episode of Dumb Decisions in the upper right corner if you want to check that one out. Along with the cold temperatures, the field at Cleveland Municipal Stadium was not in great condition that day. Players were slipping and sliding all over the place. Raiders fullback Mark Van Egan said that he was standing on a sheet of ice. The Raiders switched their shoes to AstroTurf shoes because, as quarterback Jim Plunkett said, when we went out before the game in spikes, it was like walking across your kitchen floor. Linebacker Ted Hendricks said it was like roller skating on a rink without any skates. Those were the worst conditions I've ever seen because of the icy field. And Hall of Fame offensive lineman Gene Upshaw said that he's played the game for 14 years, and that was the worst footing ever. There was nothing to suggest that kicker Don Cockroft would have been able to maintain his balance, because that field was more like an ice rink on that day than an actual football field. Now that we've talked about the weather, we have to talk about the kicker in question, and that's Don Cockroft. If the Browns called Red Right 88 with Adam Vinatieri or Justin Tucker as their kicker, the move would look really stupid. But Don Cockroft? He was not having a good game at all. The special teams unit was struggling. Cockroft used to be one of the best kickers in football. In fact, from 1968 to 74, he led the league in field goal percentage 3 times. In the history of the NFL up until that point, only 3 players in history accomplished this feat, including Lou Graza with the Browns. But by this point in his career, Cockroft was a shell of his former self. In 1979, he hit just 58.6% of his kicks, going 4 for 12 from 40-plus yards, and the percentage didn't get much better in 1980, as he hit 61.5% of his field goals and missed 15 kicks in 16 games, 10 field goals and 5 extra points. At the end of his career, Cockroft went from arguably the best kicker in football to a kicker in the bottom half of the league. And in this game, he, along with the entire special teams unit, was not playing well. It started on the first play of the game. The opening kickoff only made it out to the 25-yard line. This was not a designed pooch kick or even a mistake that worked a la Jason Elam's unintentional moment of brilliance in the 1998 AFC Championship, which you can check out in the upper right corner. Now it's the start of the second quarter, and Cockroft is lining up for a 46-yard field goal. This is one of the worst kicks I've ever seen. This kick doesn't even land initially in the end zone. There's no rotation on the ball whatsoever. In fairness to Cockroft on this play, watch the holder here. He does an absolutely terrible job, spinning the ball twice, getting the laces out, in, and then out again, all before Cockroft could even hit the ball. But I've never seen a kick where there's no rotation whatsoever. It's completely flat. Very next drive, and the Browns get inside the red zone. Cockroft is lining up for a 30-yard field goal. Should be a routine chip shot. Instead, he misses it. Can't blame the holder for this one. On 3 kicks so far, Cockroft has gotten no power behind any of them. And then, after the Browns score their first touchdown of the game, Cockroft misses the extra point short. This was a catastrophe all the way around. Holder Paul McDonald said in this case, the snap was inside and low. I barely had time to get my right hand up, and Don was ahead of himself. It was fortunate he even got to kick the ball. In the first half, on 3 scoring opportunities, Cockroft and company were 0 for 3. Now, in fairness to Cockroft, he recovered after this, as he finished the game 2 for 4 on field goals. But let's look at those 2 field goals. The first one was in the third quarter from 30 yards out. It's right down the middle, and unlike his other kicks, it's got height on it. But there's not a lot of distance. Look at where the kick lands and is caught. There's no kicking net that stopped its trajectory. It's not a powerful kick at all. And again, keep in mind that the weather and the field conditions were really bad, so I'm not blaming Cockcroft for all of this, but it's just some context to keep in mind when looking at the bigger picture as to why the Browns called Red Right 88. And the second one was also in the third quarter from 30 yards out. More of the same here. It's straight, it's got the height, but again the ball lands within the frame. Odds are on both of those kicks, if they were from 40 yards out, they would have fallen short. Cockcroft was a very unconvincing 2 for 4 on the day. And still, there was one field goal attempt that did not work in the second half that doesn't count against Cockcroft. Also in the third quarter, the Browns lined up for a 36-yard field goal. It's tough to tell whether this was a really badly designed fake or whether McDonald did a bad job with the hold, but either way the play was a failure. The Browns attempted 6 kicks during the game, 5 field goal attempts and an extra point. If you include the aborted kick or fake field goal or whatever that was in the third quarter, they went 2 for 6. Can you really blame the Browns for not wanting to try a field goal here? Again, if this was a clear day and they had one of the top kickers in football on their team, that's one thing. But to rely on a special teams unit when you didn't necessarily have to, and to rely on a kicker that was struggling, would seem kind of foolish. Especially afterwards when it was revealed that Cockcroft played the entire season with 2 herniated discs and torn cartilage in his left knee, and said that he should have gone on IR. So now that we've talked about why simply saying the Browns should have done nothing and instead played for the field goal doesn't work, we have to talk about Brian Sipe. Along those same lines, if this was the Jaguars putting their faith at the end of the game in Blaine Gabbert, or the Raiders putting their faith at the end of the game in Jamarcus Russell, that's one thing. But not only was Sipe the man to lead the Browns down the field to begin with, he was the MVP of the league. He was the best quarterback in football during the 1980 season. He led the league with a 91.4 passer rating. He finished second in passing yards and passing touchdowns. And he led the league in interception percentage, only throwing a pick on 2.5% of his pass attempts. You could trust him to make good plays, and you could trust him not to turn the ball over. In fact, I looked at every quarterback in NFL history to throw 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, and complete at least 60% of his passes in a season through the first 60 years of NFL history, going from 1920 to 80. And that list consisted of just one person, Brian Sipe in 1980. You could make a legitimate argument that Sipe's 1980 campaign was at the time the best season by a quarterback ever. Trusting Brian Sipe to do the right thing seemed like an easy decision, considering how well he played throughout the year. And now it's time to talk about the play itself. Red Right 88. There's 2 important things to talk about here with this play. Number 1, if it wasn't there, Sipe wasn't supposed to force anything. Browns head coach Sam Rutigliano told Sipe that if it wasn't there, to throw it into Lake Erie. In other words, unless the play was wide open, throw the ball as far away as you possibly can, and just live to see another down. Number 2, the play was wide open. The play is actually well designed. Look at number 44 on the Raiders. That's safety Burgess Owens. He's got control of the middle and Mike Davis is covering Ozzie Newsome. As Newsome cuts across, Owens decides to double cover Newsome and help out there. This is one of those plays that worked out for Oakland, but in reality, they dodged a bullet. Because when Owens gets caught out and decides to take on Newsome, it leaves wide receiver Dave Logan wide open on a drag route. If Sipe threw the ball to Logan, there was nobody around him. Logan had gotten by his man Dave Osteen pretty easily. With Owens gone to cover Newsome, Logan catches this pass, and it's probably a touchdown if he turns the corner. Worst case scenario, the Browns are just shy of the first down, and now the field goal becomes a relative chip shot. It's not as though the Browns called 4 verts or a halfback pass on this play. They called a well-designed play where Logan would be wide open on an easy throw. Sipe just missed it. Naturally, people questioned the decision. Raiders owner Al Davis was stunned, saying, "I was surprised he threw in that situation. I don't think anyone could have completed that pass." Osteen was surprised as well, and even Browns teammate Mike Pruitt said, "We knew Don Cockcroft could make that one." But at the same time, Coach Rutigliano was right. If the kicking unit was solid, he said, I wouldn't even have had to make the decision. There wouldn't have been a decision to make because we would have been ahead. And he's not wrong. The Browns special teams left 10 points on the board. MVP Brian Sipe was the significantly better and safer option than an old, injured, and not very good Don Cockcroft. The Browns got to this point because of Sipe. Why switch up a winning formula? Red Right 88 is one of the most infamous moments in Browns history. But make no mistake about it, this was not a bad call. When you consider the fact that the weather was abysmal, the fact that Don Cockcroft had trouble hitting water if he was sitting on a dock, the fact that the special teams unit was struggling mightily, the fact that Brian Sipe was the best quarterback in football that year, and the fact that the call itself was not bad and probably would have been a touchdown if executed properly, this is one play you can definitely make a defense for. Special thanks to all our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.